Salam sejahtera, selamat datang ke Sembang Bola Kopi Wonda. Buat kali pertama, buat julung kali, kita akan membawakan kisah-kisah ikonik dan luar biasa daripada wira-wira bola sepak kegemaran anda. Anda dah kenal player di atas padang, tapi kini kita akan cuba nak explore sedikit cerita-cerita latar belakang mereka dan segala kisah yang menjadikan mereka pemain bola sepak wira anda pada ketika ini. Untuk episod pertama, untuk episod perdana rancangan Sembang Bola Kopi Wonda ini, kita ada seorang individu yang bukan sekadar seorang bintang bola sepak di atas padang, tetapi suatu ketika dahulu pernah bekerja di ward psikiatrik sebuah hospital. Kita bersama dengan bintang skuad kebangsaan dan juga pasukan Sabah iaitu Darren Lok. Darren, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us on Sembang Bola Kopi Wonda. It's an absolute honor. We've been wanting to have this conversation for a while now. How have you been, Darren?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me. All good, very busy. Busy with the league and with the national team, but all good, thank you.
It was really good to see you back on the pitch recently because I know the last injury that you picked up in New Zealand must have been a really, really frustrating one.
Injuries have been quite a big part of my time here in Malaysia, so frustrating. It was a big game to be a part of. New Zealand, obviously, a very good national team, so I was looking forward to it. But yeah, unfortunately, an injury, and back now. So done the rehab and feeling good. So looking forward and staying positive.
The theme of injuries is something we will definitely sort of get into in just a while because that's probably been the biggest stumbling block or the biggest difficulty that you've consistently had to navigate past in your career. But perhaps the better place to start is England. Before you became a footballer in Malaysia, before you became an icon in this part of the world, you were once a boy growing up in East Sussex. Could you tell us a little bit about what was it like growing up in England, growing up in a multicultural household as well? What was that like?
Yeah, obviously growing up in England, I know no different. It's very different to here in Malaysia. My mother's from England, so I was born there. My father, born in Malaysia from Malacca, moved to England. Sorry, when he was around 20. So they both worked in as nurses. So
okay.
that's sort of where the connection of working in a hospital came from. So yeah, like I say, I know no different to growing up in any other country. It was to me normal, but yeah, it's very different to living here in Malaysia.
What was your early introduction to football? Because your parents are both nurses, but were they the people that got you into football, or was it external factors?
It was my parents' choice, of course, but they've got no sporting background. They definitely don't play any sport at all. But my grandfather, my mother's father, he was very sporty. So I guess that's where the interest came. My mother obviously had a little interest in sport through my grandfather, and he represented his where he was from in Leeds at like an athletic level. So I guess that's where the football sort of started. I played for my local town, Helsham, just at a youth level at about the age of 5. And then the more I started going, became more of a passion, and noticed that I was doing better than some of the kids at that age. And then I started to represent like at a regional level. So where I'm from is Sussex, and I played for Sussex a little bit, and then eventually ended up playing for Eastbourne Borough, which is the team that I was at before I moved to Malaysia.
What was your local club when you were growing up? Sort of like the team that you supported, team that was the closest to you, to where you grew up and lived.
Yeah, well, I'm a Man United fan. Difficult times at the moment, so I'd like to keep that one quiet for now. But I guess the closest big team from where I'm from is Brighton. So I'd go to Brighton and watch them as a kid, but at that point they were quite low down in the leagues. They were in League 1 or League 2, so they've done very well to get up to the Premier League. So that's the club that's the closest to where I live that are doing well.
We'll get to your playing career in just a bit, but I remember one of the things that fascinated me the most when I was reading about your story was when I stumbled upon the experience that you had working at the psychiatric unit within the NHS. which is a very unusual path for most people. I think not a lot of footballers go down that path of having done that bit of work. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came about, what your experience was like working within the NHS?
I guess that came from my father. My father, like I mentioned, went to England around 20, and he studied to become a nurse. That was one of the ways that he was able to stay in England. Obviously, he had to bring a profession to England, so nursing is what he went into. The field of nursing was psychiatric, working in psychiatric ward, and he sort of made his way up to management. So that is how I ended up working there. I started as a cleaner, actually, in the ward.
Oh, wow.
I used to go there a few hours a day, just when I was at college studying, just for a little bit of money. And then the opportunity then came, do you want to go into working as a support worker, which was obviously a little bit better pay. And at that time, I was playing football part-time. All the time I was playing football in England, it was never full-time. It was always at a part-time level. And this was the only way that I could work and be able to train for football at the same time.
But that sounds pretty intense though, because you work 12-hour shifts. And then, kalau korang yang tengok ni, korang faham tak? Kerja 12 jam at a hospital, and then you go and try to make a career out of playing football. That must have been a very intense period.
Yeah, it was very hard. It was tough, and the work included night shifts. So there would be times where I'd do a night shift from 7 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning, and then I'd go directly to training starting at 9 o'clock. So it was very hard, and I wouldn't see my partner much. It would be a lot of traveling away on weekends, and it was full on. And it was coming to the point before I moved to Malaysia where I was like, okay, I need to decide one or the other. I need to focus on a career, or I need to either stop playing football and start focusing on a career, or what am I going to do? I was stuck in limbo, so I was close to packing it all in until obviously I got the message to see if I wanted to come to Malaysia.
You had to make a pretty big jump. I mean, you were playing semi-pro football in England, you were working in the hospital, but then comes the opportunity to move thousands of miles away to a country called Malaysia, which of course you're familiar with because of your dad's affiliations, but still it's a new place, a new football ecosystem, a new environment. What was that like? When did you get the call? How did you make that decision? And what was the adaptation period like in Malaysia?
The way I came here was my agent he ended up eventually being my agent. So that was a guy called Scott Ollerenshaw, which I'm sure some people are familiar with. He contacted me on Twitter, of all places, Twitter at the time, and just asked the question, are you interested in ever coming to Malaysia to play football? And it hadn't even crossed my mind. After that message, I obviously did a bit of research, and I guess that was the opportunity that I'd been waiting for. I'd never played professional football. I'd been close to having trials at clubs in England, but nothing had ever been successful. So when you're getting offered the opportunity to come and play professional football, and things at home are hard, times are you're pushing yourself with football and work, it was sort of a no-brainer to sort of take that leap and to come here. But growing up, I was always, out of me and my sister, I would probably say I was the one that was much more a homebody. I didn't like to push myself out of my comfort zone. I was very close to my parents. And
so it must have been a big decision then to pack your bags and move all the way.
It was a huge decision. And I think without my partner's push to say, you can do it, I think we should go, maybe I wouldn't have come. So I had the right people around me to push me to say, I think you should go. And then I just took the leap, and I flew here first just to see what it was all like. And then I came full-time, in 2016, I think.
Yeah. And I remember 2016 very well because, you could sense the hopefulness in your voice in the first few interviews that you did. You wanted to make a career out of yourself here. You wanted to play for the national team as well. But it was never easy. The first few years were never easy. Far from easy, I should say. There's a lot of criticism. We don't have to get into the details of all of it. It's okay. But it was just never easy. There was a lot of criticism. How did you juggle past that? Were there elements of self-doubt? Did you at some point think that, am I making the right decision here?
I first came and I had to wait a while for my passport. So there was that long wait. People were expecting to see me play, and then I waited for 6 months or something for my passport to come through. And so there was that anticipation building, like, oh, okay, we're going to finally see him play, blah, blah, blah. I made an appearance in the league for JDT2 at the time. And then it was, the AFF was coming up around that time. So out of the blue, I get this phone call from Ong Kim Sui at the time, and he says that he's going to be calling me up to the next national camp. So straight away I'm thinking, wow, that's very fast.
Yeah.
And almost not understanding the importance of it. Because it came so easily.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were quite rightly questioning why. He's not done anything in Malaysian football. Yeah. Why should he be given a chance? So again, that adds some even more pressure. That pressure building, and they're thinking, okay, if he's been offered that, if he's been called up already, then he must be. We're expecting big things. So things go very fast those few months, and before I know it, I'm representing Malaysia, having not really played for my club, and I think I end up playing more minutes that year for the national team than I do for my club. And then of course I'm adapting to things. I've never played professional football before. I have to get used to even going to training every day.
Having people follow you on Instagram and drop you DMs.
Yeah, of course, there's that whole side to it. So I'm adapting to the weather, the pitch, and I go to national team, and I'll be the first one to admit I don't particularly do much. I don't perform. And of course, there comes the criticism. Fans are entitled to their opinions. So it was a tough time. It was a very tough time. And I've said previously, I owe a lot to Ong Kim Sui, Dato' Ong. At that time, to call me, he stuck his neck on the line to give me that opportunity. And then when the criticism did come, he was very supportive, and he backed me. And so I have a big respect for him as a coach and as a person. But yeah, it was a huge shock. I'd gone from working in a hospital playing football in front of barely 1,000 people. No such thing as social media. No one can contact you through social media. So you have a bad game and nobody knows about it. Or a few people might talk about it, but nothing. To coming here and then suddenly you get all these followers on social media and you get all these notifications going off, and you're trying your best not to read them because they're not particularly pleasant. But what can you do when your phone is constantly lighting up, notifying you of what someone said about you? So it's a tough time. It took a lot of getting used to, and of course you start to doubt: am I built for this? Am I ready for this? But yeah, again, I was at Johor, and at the time, TMJ obviously is involved there, and he was also very supportive. And luckily I stuck it out, and things started to get a bit better slowly. Then injuries started to come, and it was never really a very easy road, but I've loved every minute of being here. Yeah. And I say it all the time to my partner. We made the right decision. Yeah. It's been a great move.
Things eventually really picked up for you, but just before that, in 2016, when you were struggling and when the criticism was coming in, I have a story to tell you. Do you know a man by the name of Azrai Kaur?
I recognize the name.
He used to be the coach of Kedah when they won the double treble in 2007, 2008. I remember writing a piece about the criticisms that you faced in 2016, and he dropped me a message at that point. He's just passed away last year, by the way.
Okay.
And Azrai Kaur dropped me a message, and I remember very clearly what he said. I'll show you even the message later. Very clearly, he said that I don't understand the criticism about Darren. There is a player in there. He needs to be polished, needs to be worked on, but there is a player in there. I mean, people could see the raw potential beneath the things that were showing up, which is the lack of experience, your first time in Malaysia, the adaptation. Did you intrinsically know that if I give it 110%, I will eventually end up well?
Yeah, I guess so. Otherwise, I would never have stayed. I think I've struggled my whole career. I think I've always lacked confidence. I don't honestly sometimes believe that I'm as good as I am, or I know I know that I'm not your typical footballer. I know
Yeah.
that my qualities are maybe different to other players. I bring things to the pitch that I know other players don't, and I'm also not as good at certain things that other players are. So I'm very aware of what I can bring to a team and what I can't. So yeah, I think believing in myself it's been tough. It has been a constant battle, and one that I guess the more I do well, especially at national level and with my club, that confidence builds, and then you start to believe in yourself. But it's huge. Football is a huge mental game. I always say you're only as good as your last game in football.
Yeah.
People are very quick to criticize in sport in general. So you do have to be strong. And I've learned now to try and social media is great.
Yeah.
But don't look too much into social media and people's opinions. Everyone's entitled to it, of course.
Yeah.
But the moment you start looking and scrolling about yourself and reading all that, it's just a downward spiral, and I try to avoid it.
I want to talk about PJ City a little bit, because what happened after JDT was that you went on this journey to Terengganu, which again didn't exactly go
Yeah.
well. Injuries played a fundamental part
Yeah.
in creating this almost stop and start momentum within
Yeah.
your career. But PJ City, to me at least, as someone observing from the outside, that's where it really felt like your career took off completely in Malaysia. That felt like it was the right move at the right time with the right set of people and the right opportunity for your career to just take off.
Yeah, absolutely. PJ City, I say still now that time of my career was, I love being at Sabah, of course, at the moment, but PJ City is a different feeling. It was, for me, the time where I was enjoying my football the most. The management there were doing great things. We had a team full of local players. So there was no import players in the team, which obviously made things quite difficult, but it made us a very close-knit team. And I had some great teammates, and we did very well those 2 seasons to not have any import players. We pulled off some good results, and we finished quite well in the league. And on a personal note, I finally got to play every game in the position that I am most familiar with, which is as a number 9 as a striker. And when you're doing well and you're playing with confidence and and you're scoring goals, those goals don't stop. They just keep coming and coming and coming. And then that's where things sort of took off, and eventually managed to get back in the national team. And this was the first time I felt like I was in the national team on merit, rather than just being put there because, okay, Malaysia have struggled in the past with having a striker, and this is the only guy maybe that is available. Let's just give him a go. I felt in PJ was the first time where, okay, he deserves to be here now. He's scoring goals, and then had that fantastic qualifying campaign for the Asia Cup. And then obviously now I've represented Malaysia in the Asia Cup, and for me that's a career highlight. It's not going to get bigger than that.
Well, just touching a little bit back on PJ City, why did it work there? What exactly made it tick? I mean, obviously going injury-free was perfect. That made it absolutely easier for you. But in terms of the team, in terms of the structure, I mean, everybody, everyone who's watching Malaysian football, setiap orang yang menonton akan mengingati pasukan PJ City, because that was the team that shocked some of the bigger teams in some key games, with K. Devon's 3 at the back system. But what exactly was it about that team that made it click for you?
I think, like I touched on, it was just such a close group of players. We knew that we weren't going to have any import players. The management had decided, let's support my local football. And I think that's a fantastic thing to do. I think import players in Malaysia football bring so much, of course. Their quality is obviously going to raise the level of the football. But Malaysia needs to start believing that they've got this talent. And since I've been here, seen so many talented local footballers that aren't given the chance. Their minutes are limited in the league. And PJ will obviously wanted to give these players the opportunity. So I think as a team, we knew that we're going to have to be a family, and if we want to get results, because the group of players we had were they're good footballers, but some of them, we'll be honest, there was no huge players in this team. It was just a lot of very good players, but some of them had played national team in the past, but a lot of young players as well. So we knew that we had to sort of be even tighter and really grind those results out. And we had a coach in Manium at the time who I think did a fantastic job.
They were the ones that sort of propelled you back into the national team contention, as you pointed out. And I want to talk about the national team now, because right after the PJCT stint, or right in the middle of the PJCT stint, we start to see the next chapter of Darren Lok's Malaysian national team story. The initial chapter was frustrating, was underwhelming, was disappointing. But the second chapter, the way it just exploded, within the context of the national team, as far as Malaysian fans are concerned, they appreciate talent. But there's one thing they appreciate more than talent, and that's absolute hard work on the pitch. Because penyokong-penyokong bola sepak Malaysia, tagline yang korang guna nak describe Darren Lok, the tagline that they use to call you is, they call you a pressing machine. You're the guy who's just relentless up front, who's closing down the opposition, who's not giving people time and space. Tell us a little bit about that characteristic of yourself, because that became such an important mainstay within the national team.
Yeah, like I mentioned previously, I guess I touched on, I feel sometimes I'm not like your typical footballer. I guess there's things that I'm very honest in admitting that I'm not great at certain things in football. I've got my strengths and my weaknesses, and one of my strengths is when I go out on the pitch, I'm going to work as hard as anyone, and I'm going to try and make your life hell. I don't want anyone to walk off the pitch and say, oh, well, that was a really easy marking Darren all game block. So I think that's just been instilled from an early age. I don't know why. I've always been hardworking when I go on the pitch. I like to give everything until I can't give any more. So I guess, when I went back to the national team and I started playing up front, I don't know. It was what I'd always done. So to get recognition for it was very nice. Of course, it was that time during the national team was amazing. And I don't know. I don't know.
They said you were playing the Bobby Firmino role. The guy was doing all the dirty work, the hard work, to enable the wingers to come in and run riot up front. And perhaps that description makes the most amount of sense when I think about the Asian Cup and that particular game against South Korea. Everybody looks at that Faisal Halim goal where he just completely dunked on Kim Min-jae, by the way. Everybody loves that goal. Everybody looks at that goal and thinks Faisal Halim, sensational. But that goal does not happen. That goal absolutely does not happen without your initial press. That's exactly the Bobby Firmino role, isn't it? Disrupting the defenses, winning back possession. And in the end, it was Faisal's magic that gave us that goal. But tell us about that moment and how it all happened.
Like you said, I've always played that sort of way, and I'm lucky when I was playing in the national team at that time. I've got players playing either side of me, like Faisal Halim, and then you have Arif Aiman on the other side. So their quality is unbelievable. So I'm a very different, like I touched on, I'm a very different footballer to them. And I guess I do that hard work for them to hopefully have that space or to win the ball back, and then they go and score the goals. And a lot of people have always said in my career he doesn't score enough goals, or the figures aren't there. And they're probably right. Maybe I should definitely score more goals as a striker, but I like to think that the work that I do off the ball and I help the team to score the goals. So as long as the team's doing well and someone's scoring the goals, I like to think that doesn't matter if I'm not. But yeah, I'm a very different striker to a lot of people. But the Asia Cup, it was just the whole thing was just a very surreal feeling. I think there was I think you might have mentioned or tweeted something before the draw of the Asia Cup that I'd had the chance, I might have the opportunity to play against Kim Min-jae, and I'd been working in a hospital, and it's all happened in 6 years, so it was
that's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, that was a very, very big jump. And that game against Korea for us and it was an unbelievable game, and for us to get the draw in the end and be leading at one point, that's a game that, for me, in my time in Malaysia, in my time in football, that's the biggest game I've ever played in, and for sure the most memorable game.
That game against South Korea, it felt like it felt like a real emotional high. I mean, Malaysian football isn't perfect, right? But it's constantly trying. It's constantly attempting to be better, to do better. And in the process of doing that, occasionally you crave to experience those emotional highs. And it felt like that game against South Korea, it was the players, it was the fans, people at the stadium, people at home, people at restaurants, at your mamak's.
Yeah.
Everybody felt an emotional high that they probably had never experienced before.
Yeah, definitely. It was the support there was amazing as well. There was a lot of Malaysians there in the stadium that day, and like I mentioned just previously, it hadn't been going too well before that, and we knew we had one last game to try and show what we could do as a nation, because the build up to it, we were competing with a lot of good teams at a higher ranking. So I think people expected a lot, and I think we went into that game and we hadn't scored a goal yet. So just to at first, when we first scored through Faisal Halim, I think just to have that, to even scored at the Asia Cup, we didn't want to go back without having scored a goal. So just to score that goal was a weight off our shoulders, and then to go 1-0, to go 2-1 up with a penalty, then you're sort of in disbelief. But yeah, what a fantastic experience for everyone, I think, and hopefully, hopefully Malaysia can get there again in the Asia Cup. There's a lot of talented young players coming through, and I think they'll qualify. They'll start qualifying for the Asia Cup next year, and hopefully the chance comes again.
When it comes to the national team per se, I think a lot of people will never forget sort of like the contributions you made in that game. And I think it speaks a lot of volume, because usually strikers, their main desire is to score goals. They remember their goals the most. But I think it speaks a lot about you, that a game in which you didn't necessarily get on the score sheet, but that game is the one that you're referring to as the absolute highlight of your career.
I guess that's true.
But I want you to be selfish for a moment,
okay,
and talk about a game that you actually scored, and pick a goal that you would regard to be as your highlight in terms of a goal that you've scored.
I guess for me, another one of the times for Malaysia that I really did enjoy was when we were qualifying for the Asia Cup. So
was it the game against Bangladesh?
It was the game against Bangladesh, and we knew that we had to beat Bangladesh that night to qualify. And I think there was a lot. That night was quite strange. There was a lot of nerves around the stadium.
80,000 people, though.
Yeah, there was a lot of people in the stadium, and we knew on paper we should easily beat Bangladesh. No games at national level are ever easy, but we knew their ranking wasn't as good as ours, and if we played well, we'd beat them. But it took a long time to get the first goal, and then they got another. Then they equalised, and the crowd just went silent, and that's where the nerves started to come. I was on the bench this game actually, and I hadn't scored for Malaysia for a long time. I'd been back in the fold and been playing well and being appreciated for what we've talked about previously, and the pressing and the hard work, but had yet to get that goal since I'd been called back. So I come on as a sub in that game when we're winning already 3-1, and I get the final goal that night, and that sort of is where we can breathe and relax a bit, because we know that we've qualified for Asia Cup. So I guess that goal is a goal that I'll never forget, because that's a night there we qualify for Asia Cup, and we go out and we celebrate as a team, and yeah, good memories, very good.
For someone who lived a pretty ordinary life back in the UK, and then you were sort of somersaulted into stardom very swiftly. But what is your most favorite fan interaction ever?
Honestly, every interaction I have with fans is just I just find it very unusual still. I just feel like I'm just a normal person in England. I'm just your average guy I feel when I come here and get recognized, or anyone comes up and speaks to me, I do find it very strange. It is very nice, and I guess any interaction I have with any young fans is for me the one that really...
Is there one that stands out, like the nicest thing someone has said or did for you?
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's been a lot of times when there's been some young boys and stuff that have really said how much I'm like a role model or something like that. And if I'm inspiring some of the young boys, then to me I'm making it. If I'm making a big change to their life, then that's a huge thing for me. But yeah, like I say, it's very, very, very unusual for me. Strange feeling.
I want to touch a little bit about the ASEAN Mitsubishi Electric Cup. This is a pretty special tournament for you because obviously you made your debut within the national team in this tournament back in 2016 it was. I want to ask a little bit about what this tournament means to you, because it's in the context of world football, it's not the biggest tournament, but in the context of Southeast Asia, it's the one that matters the most, with incredible amount of bragging rights at stake, almost like a mini World Cup for Southeast Asia, you could argue. Tell us a little bit about your feelings about the ASEAN Mitsubishi Electric Cup.
So like you said, I first played in it in 2016, and again, I've got to be completely honest, I have no idea what the tournament was. I just arrived here, so I didn't understand the severity of it really, and how important it was to people in this side of the world. So that one was a bad experience. We didn't do very well, and we were knocked out in the group stages. And then I was lucky enough to be in the AFF in 2000 and maybe 20
or
2022.
I think there was one on 18. There was one in 2018,
yeah, not that one.
And then 2022 there was one.
I think the 2022 one, and we had a bit of a different squad that time. It was quite missing quite a lot of key players, but that one was an amazing experience. We managed to get to the semi-finals. We played against Thailand, and we went into the second game against Thailand with a 1-0 lead. And I think that whole feeling that we were sort of, I don't know, we were depleted. The squad was depleted. We had a lot of players that were new to the national team. And again, that sort of feeling that, okay, we might not be as strong as we had liked to, but we're going to make something, and we're going to try and compete. And to get to the semi-finals there, that was a really good feeling. And the support, I think, in that whole the support in this tournament always is amazing.
Home and away, it's crazy, right?
We can play in these Asia Cup, sometimes qualifying matches and all these World Cup qualifying matches, but in this particular tournament, for a fact that stadium is going to get sold out. So it's an amazing experience. It's a great tournament.
I mean, you hear stories of fans taking 24-hour bus journeys to Bangkok and selling their motorbike to avoid flight. It's just astonishing, really. But that's really the magic of of what you would refer to as the Southeast Asian mini World Cup, right? The ASEAN Mitsubishi Electric Cup. Darren, just one final question in terms of Malaysia, your legacy in football. Obviously, you still have time. You're going to continue playing in Malaysia. You're going to continue being a part of the national team. With Sabah and all that kind of stuff. But when the time does come, when the day comes that you hang your boots, what would you want your legacy? I know you probably don't think about stuff like this because in your head you've programmed yourself, I'm just an ordinary guy. But ultimately you are a footballer. You are someone that people follow and respect and idolize. What would you want your legacy within Malaysian football to be?
I just guess when I'm not playing anymore and people talk about me or anything, I just want to, as long as people know that every time I go on that football pitch, I'm going out there to just do the best I can for whoever I'm playing for, the club or the country. It's been an unbelievable journey, and every time I go and every time I put on the Malaysia jersey to play for the country, it's such a proud moment. So I guess the legacy would be that I went out there and gave 100% in every game that I did. And another thing is anything's possible. I'm just this normal boy from England that's been able to represent his country at the Asia Cup, and if I'm able to do that, then there's plenty of young boys in Malaysia that can definitely do that. It's just hard work. Hard work gets you very far in life. So whatever you do, apply yourself properly and make sure that you work hard, because you can go very far.
At this point, I think I speak for most Malaysians when we say that it's always an absolute honor and inspiration watching you battle it out on the pitch with 110% with your running, with your intensity, with your pressing. And when the day comes that we no longer get to see that, that'll be probably a really, really sad day for most Malaysian football fans. Thank you, Darren. But before that, we want to get you to do something. We want to get you to sign a jersey, a national team jersey that's going to be worn by a lucky football fan out there. Kepada semua penonton, ingat korang kena follow account media sosial Wonda untuk dapatkan maklumat lanjut tentang cara Korang nak menjadi pemenang bertuah untuk memenangi jersey yang ditandatangani oleh Darren Lok ini. Can we get the jersey and maybe a bit of time for Darren to sign it? Jadi sekarang ni kepada semua yang menonton di luar, ini peluang anda untuk memenangi jersey yang ditandatangani oleh Darren Lok. Jersey eksklusif. Yang mana kalau korang nak menang, korang kena follow akaun media sosial Wonda untuk dapatkan maklumat lanjut tentang cara korang nak memenangi jersey ini. So Darren, could you please sign on that jersey for us? Ingat korang kena follow media sosial Wonda, akan ada maklumat lanjut untuk cara korang dapat memenangi jersey yang ditandatangani khas oleh Darren Lok. Ni jersey lawa, ni jersey yang dipakai waktu Asia Cup hari tu. Thank you so much again, Darren. Final words?
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Terima kasih kepada semua yang menonton episod pertama Sembang Bola Kopi Wonda. Pastikan korang follow media sosial Wonda, bukan saja untuk maklumat lanjut tentang cara nak menang jersey, tapi untuk korang tengok siapa yang akan jadi tetamu seterusnya dalam episod seterusnya. Jumpa anda dalam episod kedua.